Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Talkback for We the Collective. My name is Jeremy Lenz. I am the Executive Director of the Teaneck International Film Festival, and we are so proud to welcome filmmaker Kevin Satterfield of We the Collective to the panel discussion tonight, along with Asanni Armon and Diana Taylor. This is the 20th anniversary of the Teaneck International Film Festival, and we are so proud to amplify diverse voices. I would like to start by introducing Kevin Satterfield, who is a New York-based professional and independent film producer. He is a cultural steward in so many different forms. We the Collective is his first project as a filmmaker, and he was inspired by a myriad of ways in which New York City's nightlife ecosystem has continued to play an integral role in driving social progress within the LGBTQ plus community. Asanni Armon is a Black genderqueer artist and founder of For the Girls, featured in the documentary. For the Girls fundraises to assist people with rent and gender affirmation surgeries. They are also a founding member of the Black Justice League at Princeton University. Additionally, Asanni's also a rapper, a songwriter, a producer, and co-founder of Siren, a collective that nurtures musical talent right here in New York City. And they are passionate about addressing and redressing the violence that people face as it pertains to housing discrimination, job discrimination, and access to affirmative health care. And then we have Diana Taylor, who hails from Houston, Texas, moved to New York City in 1997, and became the first and only trans woman to sign with Priority Records, where her dance single BU was released in 1998. She is best known for working with artists such as Ice Cube, Eazy-E, No Limit, Method Man, among many other gangsta rap artists. Diana is also a fierce advocate for LGBTQ rights, particularly trans rights. And in 2025, she was also the recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award from her hometown, presented by Princess Janae House and the Monica Roberts Community Center in Houston, Texas. So welcome to tonight's conversation. I am honored to have you all here, and I want to get right into this conversation. This film ends so powerfully with a song called Transsensuality Biblioteca, with the words, quoting, "We are in a state of emergency." Kevin, I'd like to start the conversation with you. You document a period in New York City nightlife and how New York City nightlife is kind of the catalyst for allowing people to be who they are, and for our community, the queer community, to find spaces and safe spaces where they can affirm themselves without fear of violence or shame or stigma. Talk to us about the genesis of how this came about.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you to the Teaneck International Film Festival. Thank you, Jeremy, for this opportunity. Um, I think the genesis was really inspired by what I was seeing in the wake of COVID and the what some people call the Great Racial Reckoning or the Black Lives Matter movement from 2020. Um, Obviously, different communities were being impacted by what we were seeing, but what I was noticing was a disproportionate impact that both of those phenomena were having on the Black LGBTQ plus community. And one of the things that was really impacted was obviously the physical spaces of nightlife and those physical opportunities to gather, and how folks really had to move themselves from nightlife to more digital and more internet-based ways of gathering and organizing, which is not new, but I think the those phenomena kind of really became catalysts for more of that mobilization that way. And I just thought that it'd be a really interesting snapshot of where and what life was in 2020, 2021, which is when we started production on the documentary. And so it's really cool now to see, 5 years later, what were the types of conversations and what were the things that were really at top of mind for people when we were filming this, and how have they changed or how have they remained the same in the 5 years since then. But it was really a way for me to just archive history at that point and look at it from a very specific lens and a very specific POV.
And the film documents a lot of what happened during COVID, particularly with the George Floyd movement,
Mm-hmm.
and where we came from the George Floyd movement. Flash forward to 2025, and this film ends with we are in a state of emergency. While we have made a lot of progress with regard to LGBTQ plus rights, we are seeing devastating attacks taking place at the federal, state, and local levels, where our community is the target and
Mm-hmm.
has become the continual target for everything that this administration that we're currently living under is trying to point blame at.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of talking about where we are today and where our community is today and where our spaces are today, can you speak to that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always really struck by the fact that, as we see in the film, some of the first people to always be on the front lines of these fights for rights are people who are trans, um, people who kind of sit within the margins, even within the Black community. They're the first people to be on the front line, to be fighting for the rights of all, and at the same time, they're the first to be in a place of vulnerability and to lose rights that have been gained and resources. So I thought that knowing both of those things as truth were just really important to make really obvious in the film as it pertains to who's really doing the work of organizing, who's really doing the work of creating a grassroots change in a way that isn't in a way that's divorced from over reliance on the government. If we know we cannot rely on the government to provide these basic services like housing and food and medical care, then how else can people get things that they need to live a life with dignity and live a life of of fullness? And so I was really just inspired by understanding that we are going to go through many changes. We're probably going to see a period after this, hopefully, where some of those rights come back. But we can't assume that those rights are enshrined or guaranteed the way we thought they were before. Um, but I think it necessitates a need to ask the question: how else can people actually live a life of dignity if the government is not going to be the source of that?
And to your point, I think one of the things so interesting about this film, and to bring you into the conversation, Asanni, is that, as you said, it's really up to our community, right, to do the work, to first and foremost protect ourselves and to provide spaces within our own queer community where we can be ourselves. And Asani, you are representing an organization called For the Girls, which, you know, people think about nightlife and they think about going to clubs, getting dressed, the ballroom scene, what have you, but they don't always see the scene in terms of a way of assisting people with life circumstances, like paying the rent, like raising money to get gender affirming surgeries to pay for healthcare. So, talk about the evolution of your organization and your desire to really become an activist in this space to make change, um, to empower our community.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. First, thank you for having me. Um, well, I think that FTG for the girls, it comes from a long line of work that Black, queer, and trans people have been doing. I mean, if we really want to go all the way back, I got the idea from Langston Hughes throwing rent parties in Harlem. That's really where the idea came from. But really one of the original concepts behind ballroom was a bunch of houses coming together with house mother, house father, et cetera, taking in a bunch of kids who who had been really discarded by their bio families and people around them, taking them in and helping them to get on their feet. Balls have for a long time have like fundraised money to help people. So FTG kind of comes in the long line of that work. And really I just see the work that we do with FTG is kind of in some ways picking up the mantle. Not to say that that work is not happening anywhere else, but it's just continuing the work that has already happened, and that's already been happening and continues to happen. Really because Black queer people, Black trans people really don't have a choice. I always say, we're the what is it? Last hired and the first fired.
Yes.
And always working under the table, and it's always quick. We're always the quickest out the door, right? So we've always had to figure it out amongst ourselves and for ourselves. And I just see that the work that FTG has done and continues to do as just an extenuation of the work from Ballroom, from Langston Hughes and Harlem Renaissance and the Harlem and people in New York in general, but helping each other out, right? So.
And currently for the girls, it's a rotating party, meaning you're organizing in different spaces throughout the city. How
Yes and no. I mean, we haven't hosted a party in a bit. It's been, I think the last time we did one was last year. Just because I've kind of pivoted, where I can put my focus. So we are still doing fundraising efforts, but in different ways. Usually not at parties anymore, but different types of events. Like actually in 2 days, we're doing a live stream event where we'll be having a bunch of performances and people will be donating through that. So just kind of trying to diversify the way we do it. I want to keep it fun, keep it different. So yeah.
and I think that's, important is our queer joy, right? And not allowing anybody to take that. I think that's something that in the resiliency within our community, something that is so special. And Diana, you are one of those special people who I have had the pleasure to meet, to work with, to attend your concerts. And in the time that I've come to know you, I know what I've learned, what an incredible activist you are, not only for who you are as a musician, as an artist back in 1997, and I'm sure you probably hold the title of one of the first and only trans women to be signed to a major record label. But in addition to that, you are an incredible force and activist for the trans community. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the impact that you've had with regard to legislation, and also speak to what it was like for you to be the first trans artist in a record label, and your sentiments about that?
I want to thank you so much for such kind words regarding me as a performer and an activist. I do want to say for the record that I did not work with those label mates. I was just signed to the same label, which set precedents because being signed to a major record label, Priority Records, my first record, in 1998, was a very, very, very pivotal moment in my history because I had hailed from Houston, Texas, and I moved to New York with very little money. And within a year, I was signed to Priority Record Label with those artists that you mentioned, Ice Cube, so forth, those artists.
And Diana, just speak a little louder. If you could just speak a little louder into
Okay,
the mic.
I'm really, be honest with you, I'm having a hard time hearing everyone. So I'm trying to listen close because you guys on my end sound extremely little, very, very low. So I'll talk a little louder. How
Great.
about,
I can hear you much better now. Yes.
okay. Well, in 98, of course, I signed to Priority Record Label, and it to me it was a miracle because it wasn't planned. I presented a demo to a gentleman that I had met that come out to hear me sing at a nightclub in New York, which was at the time called Cafe Wa. I think it's still Cafe Wa.
I remember
WHA
Cafe
Christian.
Wa. Cafe
Long
Wa.
story short, the producer heard me sing and thought, "Hey, can you write?" I said, "I can write." My writing is what got me the the record deal, a single deal with Priority Record Label, and then of course I created my own label years later. As far as the activism, well, my entire existence has been activism. I've been an advocate, self-advocate, and advocate for our community, the trans community, LGBTQ plus community, all of my life. Just by existing is an act of advocacy. However, something very unfortunate happened to me in 2009 in Newark, New Jersey. And it's, of course, all over the internet, but I was harassed by police, and I reached out to the ACLU of New Jersey, and they were very, very, very supportive and filed a lawsuit against the Newark Police Department. And from there, I continued my advocacy as far as being very vocal and visible out in the world, in the community. I also appear in a movie with the Sylvia Rivera Law Project, and it's called Toilet Training. And that's where you talk about legislation and us trans women, just us in general, just being, in the trans world, whether male or female trans, or male identified or female identified. We came a long way because fighting for our rights to be able to use the restroom where we felt most comfortable and that where we belong was a very huge milestone. And so I was very blessed to be a part of that. So the movie is titled Toilet Training with the Sylvia Rivera Law Project. Also, the name change. I've been fighting for years for us to be able to have our name changed and not have to pay like enormous fees. Sylvia Rivera Law Project, again, was very instrumental in assisting me with that. I paid absolutely no money. And then Kellen Lord is great for the hormonal therapy. So I've been out there advocating so that we can have the hormones, we could have healthcare, we could have the right to use the restroom where we feel most comfortable and to be respected in that way. And I continue right to this day to do my best to be a voice and to be seen. And I really do appreciate Asanni for all of her work, all of your work, ma'am. And I thank you for what you do, Asanni.
As I do, seriously, thank you for everything that you do, seriously.
It's incredible, the bravery, I think, to be there on the front lines, particularly at a time where we are so targeted. And you speak to this, Diana, in what you said, and your film, Kevin, also speaks, where there's an actual quote in your film that says, "Choosing life is activism as a Black trans woman." That resonated so strongly with me because our lives, Black, queer, trans women, have some of the highest mortality rates in the nation. We already know, what suicide rates are for queer youth. So being able to be a leader within your community and to provide those who may not have the power within themselves to be the leaders is something so remarkable that you all are doing and in telling these stories. We also spoke about Sylvia Rivera Law Project, which does a lot of work to help the trans community. And for those viewers who are watching, because you have to remember, there are probably a lot of people who are watching this film who don't know the struggles of the trans community. And so much of, I think, the work that we're doing in this space is also to inform and educate people about who we are, and that we are people just like everybody else. And we want to be seen as people, not necessarily as being identified as, oh, that's, the trans person. No, I'm Diana Taylor, I'm Asanni Armon, and you need to know me for who I am. Both, and also Sylvia Rivera, Marsha P. Johnson, for those who don't know, they were two of the trans women who started the Stonewall riots, which basically was the catalyst for the gay liberation movement. Marsha P. Johnson hailed right here from Elizabeth, New Jersey, next to Newark. So there are lots of roots. But I want to also touch upon, the importance in understanding why having space for us to be safe is so critical, particularly now. And where you all see our future going. Obviously, I think the nightlife scene, for myself included, was the place for me where I understood my own sexuality. I came out, I had my first kiss in New York City in the nightlife because I was a suburban kid going into the city to seek out what I knew existed. And, that space was critical for shaping who I was. Without that, it wouldn't have existed, right? And I was fortunate to live in this city, but so many people aren't, right? If they're living in rural areas that don't have access to go out to meet other people like them, they're just basically have the internet. And obviously we have connections now where you have FaceTime and you have Zoom and different arenas where you can connect with other people, which is great. But my question is, where do we go from here, and what is the evolution? So much is changing, and it feels like we all live in our bubbles. But in terms of making progress, how do we counter this insanity that we're seeing? And I'll open that to anyone.
I was going to say, who wants to take that?
I guess I'll start. I'll start with the question where you asked, what does it look like moving forward? Or sorry, why is it critical to have these safe spaces for us? And I think that for me, the answer is very simple, that it's critical to have these spaces because it's our right. Like, we deserve to have the same access to any and everything that everybody else has access to. Whether it's as something as, I think, monumental, but in the grand scale of things, something like a safe space to go party and to experience your first kiss, experience affirming relationships with people who are like you, who support you, who care about you, who have your best interest at heart. Or if it's something like Diana brought up, with access to bathrooms that are aligned with who we are, right? We should be able to have access to and enjoy and engage in and do all these things that everyone else has access to without it being a second, third, fourth, or fifth thought, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that to segue that into the second question you asked, what does that look like right now? It looks like what it's kind of always looked like for us, which is we have to keep fighting for it. And not everyone has to fight for everything. Not everyone can fight for everything. But there hasn't been a moment in trans history where we haven't been fighting for something.
That's right.
There's not been a moment where we just kind of had everything being handed to us. It's completely fine. And everything's all great and good. Some moments are certainly more difficult than others, for sure. And I think this one is getting up there. But at the end of the day, we are standing on the backs of giants, right? Like, we have blueprints, and we have people who have fought tremendous fights for us. We know what to do, and we know how to do it. It's for some of us to step up and do. And that fight looks different for everyone. That fight looks different depending on what we're talking about. But
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Kevin, did you want to add to that?
I'll add just a little bit, but I think one thing that Asanni just said that really spoke to me is I don't take a fatalistic approach to what moment we're in right now. I think, as Asanni mentioned, we've always been fighting, and groups have always been fighting for their rights. And when those moments do come, what I think about is what can I control? Like, what do I really have control over? And that's really the power of community. I have the people that know me, that I know, that I feel really close with. And when life gets tough, when it feels like everything is trying to attack you, demonize you, villainize you, the community is really what holds me. And so extending that into nightlife for me in some way means making sure that the spaces that we create are preserved for us. And
Right.
I say that to say I had a couple people after I was filming and after I was making the film say, well, and they were allies. I'll say that they asked, well, how like I would love to attend, or like I would love to come to a party, and I would love to like be in those spaces. And I think it's important to let those who want to support us in this fight know that some spaces are designed for us by us.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that they cannot show up for us in ways that are valuable, but it means really respecting and honoring like the space that we're creating. And I think that's just one conversation that I want more of us to start having with allies specifically, so that we're not just creating spaces but preserving the spaces that will keep us safer. Never obviously fully safe, but safer than not.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. Because we know our parties are the best, and what happens is everybody wants to come to our parties,
I get the
and
FOMO, right?
because one thing we know how to do is put on a party.
That's exactly right.
Um, no, and I think the work that you all are doing and in being able to share our stories and tell our stories. That's how we impact change, how we humanize who we are as individuals, because representation, as we know, matters. And being able to provide a platform where people can learn about us and see us for who we are is really what's so important. So, I want to thank each of you for the work that you do. And it's inspiring because we are an activist festival. And one of the things that is challenging at times is we know that so much of change relies on our youth, on our younger people, to continue to not only know our history, but honor our history, because there is that disconnect even within our own community in times.
Mhm.
Our young people don't know necessarily what the elders have gone through to get here, and they just think that, oh, I'll always have PrEP, and they don't understand what HIV and AIDS was about, right? So these are constant kind of reminders that, there isn't a gay school that people go to, right, to learn this stuff. We have to educate not only our population, but the non-queer population as well. So I think in seeing, young people like you both, all, on here telling this story, and Diana, for the path that you have set to pave the way, is just remarkable. And I want to thank each of you for being with us here tonight, and continue lighting that fire, continue creating queer joy, and don't let anybody ever put that joy out. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank
Yeah.
you
Thank
all.
you so much.
Can I add something really quickly?
Yes.
I want to say that I really immensely enjoyed We the Collective. I watched the movie, and there was some points in that movie that really, it just, I was just so amazed at how well spoken the ladies were in the movie, how candid and open. And one one thing that shocked me was how when a statement was made about how watching Paris is burning,
Mm.
they had no idea that that was going on, that there was ballroom scenes, that there were places where the girls can be themselves. And now in today's time, they say, well, they can go and twerk. I don't twerk. But all that was just absolutely fabulous to me. And but I do want to state for the record that we are more than just drag performers or streetwalkers and ladies of the night, things like that. We actually do have positions such as in law. There are some amazing trans women that are in the legal field. One is Phyllis Fry in Houston, Texas. She's one of the first trans women to become an attorney in Houston, Texas. Phyllis Fry, and I could go on and on and on. So we have brains, and we do finish school, we do go to college, we do marry very well, do all those things. We do have jobs. One more thing, real quick, if I could interject. One of the most amazing things that happened to me. You have to remember, I'm 57 years old. I don't look it, but I'm 57 years old. And I wrote a book about it. It's on Amazon. I am not aging watching you. But I want to say this. One of the most amazing things that I thought was a miracle when I was about 18 years old is when McDonald's hired me in makeup. That was unheard of. So we have come a long way. No, there's not a school, but we are teachers as we live. And Kevin, the movie just blew me away. It was so well put together, so well, just it covered everything. There was nothing left, I feel. I thought maybe while we were, here in the having the talk that we would talk about some of the places. Asanni and I were probably gonna talk about some of the places we've had the privilege of going to, like Esquilita, Sound Factory, Warehouse, Chi,
Warehouse, yes.
on and on and on, to potatoes. So I just thought I'd throw all that out there too. That it helped shape who I am today.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm part of that. I am part of that. I would not be who I am today without those places. The Warehouse, I lived in the Bronx, Sound
Okay.
Factory, we can talk about Tunnel, Twilo, Roxy.
Yes.
I wish I was old enough to have been at Paradise Garage and Studio 54, but
Oh, I wasn't there.
that was before my time.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I
Esquilita.
that our joy, and we see that replicated now on TV. We've seen shows like Pose that really gave that inside look into ballroom culture, and we've seen ballroom culture just explode from something that
Yeah.
was really underground, that was created by us, to now become mainstream. We've seen RuPaul's Drag Race become a mainstream show that's won countless Emmy Awards, and something that started really on the fringes. So,
Right.
our stories are being seen. We have Sarah McBride in Congress as the first trans congresswoman for the state of Delaware. So much is shifting, and in a positive way. And obviously, people try to take that away, but they're not going to. They're not going to, because the laws, they may want to change the laws, but society evolves in the way that it evolves, and you can't change the culture.
Right. Right.
We just have to continue the fight.
Right.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up tonight. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate you, and be sure to check out the other films at the 20th anniversary of the Teaneck International Film Festival. Thank you and good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.